$5 Path to Awakening. It's the best buy of the week. The title is Boundless Awakening, the Heart of Buddhist Meditation, and was given as instructions by Shaman Rinpoche from hiding to this detail. Rinpoche worked also the last years of his life on a more extended version of this book, so it's still, I don't know, in the pipes.
I heard Lara try to finish it end
Okay.
of this year. That's
End
what I
of this
heard
year.
somewhere.
Wonderful. So
Hopefully.
we could have a more detailed version of it. And it's quite interesting because Shaman Rinpoche was not the first teacher to do that. The ninth Karmapa also created several, as you said, versions of this book. There is one which is called The Ocean of Definitive Meaning, which is a very big, very, very extensive description, a manual for teachers and meditators. But he also wrote another text which is called Mahamudra That Dispels the Darkness of Ignorance, which is a smaller version of his bigger book. And he also gave a teaching which is a condensed version of this, which is called Shukuzutsu, the finger pointing out the Mahamudra, which is a super, super condensed version of the big, big books. So according to your the level of your need of detail, let's say, you can find what you need in these different volumes. They're all working about the same thing. They're all talking about the same thing. They're talking about the true nature of mind, and the realization of which brings the full and complete liberation as a Buddha experiences. And then some we need precise guidance. Some of us need just basic instruction because they will do it. You know, and in the end, it's all about doing it. You know, these books are not doing it for you. They're showing you how to do it. They're inviting you in different ways, with different methods, but in the end, you do it. And you know, as I was saying, the different level of sophistication of the text of the ninth Karmapa, I was trying to think of what would have been a more direct expression than even the finger that points out Dhammakaya. And that's Tilopa's shoe. When Tilopa's disciple Naropa was very close to realizing the true nature of mind, he was a pandit, he was a scholar, he studied, he knew all the world, all the philosophy inside out, and dropped it, and then left in the wilderness to find a guru that to some appeared like just a weirdo, and to some other as a presence of enlightenment on earth. So it was really hard to find out. So he learned from him something was less formal. And the very, very last moment of his training, the Naropa took his sandal and slapped Naropa in the face. So that's the shortest version.
Should we start hitting each other?
Yeah, I guarantee you it's not going to work. Because again, everything depends. So because that was the right time, that was the right method. You know, he took his shoes because there was not a stick around. You know, it could have been the stick of Tilopa. That's the shoe. Anyway, so I guess what I'm trying to point out in this is that none of the word describe directly the experience. It's like when we're talking about absolute reality, we talk about absolute reality in the context of relative reality. We're talking about relative definition of absolute. So there's not a word, there's not a concept, there's not a teaching that can point out, or no, rather say what it is, but can point out, like the figure pointing out the moon. And and maybe your gaze will move towards the moon, but if you're stupid, it will stay on the finger. Yeah. Because you're attached to, oh, no. It's like if you're going to Richmond and you get stopped by the first panel that says Richmond, 100 miles. I'm in Richmond. No, it's just a sign. It's just a sign. It's telling you this way. But all of these books and all of these techniques are just signs for pointing out. They're a gesture. You know, that's why in the practice of Mahamudra, mudra is a gesture. You know, like dancers would have mudras. There's all sorts of mudras, but it's something that points out Maha, what is great, what is beyond. Many ways of explaining the word Mahamudra, but one way, you know, we could say meditation or abiding in the true nature of reality, knowing in a non-dual awareness the true nature of mind. But you can also, as a sort of a description of the path, say that this is the gesture that points out what is greater. And this greater cannot be defined, cannot be reduced to words and concept. You'll have to make the experience. You know, and that's why the shoe of Tilapa only works for Naopa. So we cannot repeat, because that would be the equivalent of looking at the finger trying to see the moon. So in this little, very, very tiny little book, Rinpoche is bringing together the most important elements that will guarantee a very fruitful path. You know, the book itself doesn't guarantee. You know, but the line I liked from Benjamin Franklin says, like, the Constitution guarantees the pursuit of happiness, but whether you're going to reach it or not depends on you. Okay, so the book is the pursuit of happiness. Are you going to make it? It's up to you. It's really up to you.
Something I wanted to mention, because this is something that impressed me. Wei Ling early on said this about Rinpoche, is that he gives you the essence. So sometimes it's small and it's easy. It's easy to read words, and especially when it's small and fast, you read, oh, okay, I understand, and you just move on and not get it, in a sense. So it's something that's like an essence teaching. So it's worth either reading a little bit and reflecting and kind of digesting, or read it and then turn around and read it again, because it's not going to be just accessible. It's not like processed food where all the calories are immediately available. You're going to have to chew on it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It is not a book you read cover to cover. It's not a novel. It's something you ponder. It's something you ponder, and it's something that you put in your own practice at a very slow pace, so that you can really come to see all the details in your own experience that are sort of indicated in there. And you will see, actually, when we go through this text, Rinpoche is never really, maybe I'll find out I'm wrong when I say that, when I read it, but it seems to me that Rinpoche is never really telling you what you're going to have, what the experience will be. He's talking in general terms, you know, what is the nature of meditative concentration, for instance, but he's not saying, oh, you will experience this. You know, if you sit 25 minutes, at minute 26, you'll have this. You know, because when you do that, first, it's a lie, because you don't know, and two, it creates a lot of expectations in the person's mind. If minute 26 it doesn't happen, then at minute 27 the guy starts freaking out. And like, I'm not good, or this method is not good. And so the thing was just late. He would have come at 28. But at 28 he was so busy with the resentment that it never happened. You know, so that's why nobody said, okay, this is the schedule. This is the deadline. nobody says that. But he's giving you a lot of things on how to put the best conditions, on your side, both physically and mentally, and what kind of experiences in general, very generic terms, may arise, and what the kind of mistakes can occur when you think it's true, it's genuine, but actually it's just a mental construction. So it's sort of like telling you how to put the best conditions together and then sit with it, and then some generic experience I'll describe, and so that you can somehow, when you go through this, you say, oh, it's kind of like what the book says. But it's always very different and very personal. We say like, when you sit and then your mind calmly abide in the awareness of whatever arises and falls, without judgment and the need to control, you will feel maybe a sense of spaciousness, relief, therefore well-being. Spaciousness, relief, and well-being. Can you describe this objectively? There is no objective definition of bliss. People have bliss with donuts. I know some of them. But I went through the DA, the Donut Anonymous, and then I moved on. And so now when I see it, I still have the idea that it used to be bliss, but I know it's just junk. It's poison in my body. That is just invited in because I'm just an addict. So it's not bliss anymore. So I had a mistaken idea of bliss that led me to all sorts of very, very inconvenient experiences. And with very bad result on your health and so on. So he's saying, okay, you have this sense of spaciousness and relief, therefore well-being, bliss, or an experience of clarity. Clarity, like somebody turns the light on. You have a bulb inside. It's a word again. And that's how or you have a sense of emptiness. That means suddenly you have no thoughts. And a lot of people begin meditation with this assumption that a good meditation is a meditation without thoughts. To which my teacher Genen Rinpoche would always say, then if this is the truth, then this table is the best meditator. I've never had a thought. Never had an emotion. Never wished anybody harm, whatever. So worship it, the holy table. That's what you want to become, a piece of furniture? Obviously not. So it's not an absence of thoughts. And actually the term in Tibetan, mitokpa, means not me, tokpa, conceptual elaboration. You stop the inner chat, you stop, the narration, writing a story about the impression you had. You see something, and then immediately there's a chain reaction that starts. You see it, you like, you don't like it, and then you say, it's red. How do you know it's red? Who named it red? It's not red in itself. The redness of the thing cannot be established. It's red because you compare to other things that had more or less the same, tinge, and so you call it red. And then red is, red, I like it. Oh no, I like blue. And these days, about the only colors we have in mind. I forget the green. There's green also. Anyway, I like the blue, I like the red, I hate the green. And then you build up strategies on that. And all of that is a story. I want more of the green, more of the blue, more of the red, less of these three. I want nothing at all. I like black, because I'm a pirate, so I want black. These are stories. Imputation, mental constructions. They lead nowhere but frustration, suffering, anger, grasping, arrogance, all sorts of donut poison. So when you look at it, you say like, I use words to explain what happens, but when something arises, you look at it, period. I would tend to say even you look, not even at it. You you notice. You notice, without judgment, without evaluation. This is really hard, because it's inbuilt. You know, it's an old habit, die-hard habit of the chain reaction of what in Buddhist terminology we call the skandhas, the aggregates. They pile one on another and gives you the impression of something that exists, me. If I see that thing that is red, I know it's red, therefore there is somebody who has this idea, so I exist. You know, this is a story. It's piling up stuff. That's the skandha. So what we try to do is the words are missing. Unglue things. Yeah, you pile up things, somehow they sort of merge into one thing, and this thing has an absolute, in your perception, has an absolute value. So what you do with your meditation is you notice all the different elements that will constitute the experience, knowing that all of these elements appear and disappear. They never appear all at the same time. The image that's given in the classic literature is when you have a torch in the night and then you spin it, you see a wheel. And you could swear there is a wheel of fire. But there's not such a thing. It's just a succession of movement with an eye that sort of links the snapshots into the frames, the still frames into a moving picture. And then you said, oh, there was this spinning wheel in the sky, but this never happened. So when you look at all the elements, okay, it's a movement of a torch, but that's not all. There is a torch. There is something that can burn. There is oxygen. There is a planet. And there's an environment that created oxygen. And there's a guy who has an arm and a mind that thinks, that looks fun, I'm going to spin it. And this guy needed parents. And their parents and their parents and their parents. So suddenly, when you look at what you think is a circle of fire in the night, you see the interconnectedness and you see the entire story. If you're really, really attentive, you can see the entire story. So we call you omniscient. Because you're not restricted to what you think of what is appearing. You see how the things appear and the interconnectedness that led to this moment. So when you meditate, you look at this in a very detached way, which means that you're not gone, you're not out for lunch, you're here, but you are not playing with your thoughts. You don't suppress them violently, but you don't entertain them endlessly. You just see what arises and what falls, arises and what falls. And maybe you see the gap in between. You know, you can abide in a gap. You can abide in a contemplation of what comes and goes. And when you do that, you realize how what you thought was my thinking, my major thought, was just a train of thoughts, like this spinning wheel. It never happened. You know, sometimes when you're stressed and you think, oh, I can't hold it, my head's going to explode. You know, you sort of physically locate all your conflicting thoughts in your skull, under your skull, in your brain, and then you think that there's so many thoughts down there that, you know, you're going to just like blow a fuse or blow your head, blow the bulb. But actually, you don't have so many thoughts. You have only one at a time. But it gives you the impression there is a spinning wheel. And then you build a story about this. I can't take it anymore. You know, I can't have this spinning wheel in my head. You know, the flames goes out of my ear, and then it burns my hair. and then I have to buy a wig. But I can't buy a wig, it's really disgusting. Then I should wear a hat. I don't have a hat. Oh, I have to go to Macy's. I heard they have good sales. Here you are, you know? And that's how we make the world. So the cessation of the discursive process which is one of the generic experiences that Rinpoche describes, that's it. You realize that, and that's why it's compared to emptiness. Because you realize that none of the things you think are substantial reality. They are coming together through many, many factors in a constant flux. They arise and disappear. You barely notice that it's gone. And it's not accumulating. It's not piling up. It's not making a big heap of thoughts that are going to sort of flow out of your nose and out of your ears because your skull is too small to contain all this. You know, if all these things were real, you know, and then if you, at night you dream of a big city and cars, how big is your skull to hold this? You know. So, if you just listen to the words and says, okay, cessation of discursive processes, you're like, you know, stop talking in doctor, like talking in, you know, layman English, you know. Okay, no more inner chat. Or emptiness. Oh, you mean nothing? No, you know, if I meant nothing, I would say nothing. I said emptiness. Or, maybe it's better for you to understand in this way, devoid of any substantial, permanent, autonomous reality. Things arise, all depends, in interdependent origination, and vanish. And the conditions that bring them together are dissolved. They go in, you know, there's a morphing. And that means that when you look at this, you realize that nothing is substantial and permanent autonomous reality. And then you freak out, you start telling you, oh my God, I'm not substantial, I'm not permanent, like my niece, I don't want to be in the outer space. So you sort of come back to your usual way of thinking, I am having this thing, and that's me. I own it. I own my thoughts. Or actually you're possessed by your thoughts. You don't own them. They own you. So that's, you know, the difficulty in using words to describe experiences that are very unique and very personal and come to you in a very personal way, using generic terms. But what? What else can we use? I mean, that's the only thing we have. And the introduction of this book, Rinpoche is saying, sorry dudes, I will have to use words and I don't trust them. But, you know, before going into the actual topic, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the limited medium of language is inadequate to convey the actual experience of even the most fundamental forms of meditation and mindfulness. Right from the beginning it says, like, you know, that's why I write a small book, because the words are not really reliable. So I use as little as possible so I can have sort of a damage control using less words, you know, which is true. I mean, when you write a thick book, you got more possibilities to be trapped in your own thinking processes. When you use only one word, there is the danger you don't get it. And then because you don't get it, then you look for another word. You go to another church or another library, and then you say, oh, I got to get the big book. Because like you said, like, this is your Bible, it's kind of thin. You know, like, there's a comedian who says that for sure there's an evidence that God is a woman. Because if you look at the Bible, if a man had written the Bible, he would say, love another, pass it on. And then, you know, this style and abundance of details, that's an evidence that God is a woman. So, okay, maybe it's not so funny, but as a man I find it funny.
A French man.
A French man, yeah. But I don't have to justify and say, you know, but by the way, I tremendously respect women and love them, and you know, I'm pretty good. I don't feel I have to justify. I'm just like, it's a bad joke, I'm sorry. It makes me laugh, maybe it doesn't make you laugh, and that's okay. Maybe I'll keep it for myself. Anyway, the concepts of any language are based on common experience. Common experience. That means it's a nominal convention. We have to define the words. That's why in the very extensive Buddhist studies, you start with semantic. You start with, etymology. You start with all these, basically learning the language, grammar, poetry. You learn to use the language, and what you discover progressively, and maybe poetry is the thing that helps you most to do that, because it's not serious, So if you learn metaphysics and so on, psychology, everything is serious, Actually, the word for Abhidharma in Sanskrit, is unchu, which means a real thing, So poetry is lighter. Poetry uses metaphors. Poetry plays with words, twist them, play on words, and so on and so forth. So give a little sense of it's not an objective reality. But anyway, when you do a very extensive study, like you spend 20 years, that's aiming for a PhD in Buddhism in a monastic context, then you start learning the words. Because we have to agree, okay, when I use the word rupa in Sanskrit, sup in Tibetan, what do you use in English? Well, some will say form, like in form is emptiness, emptiness is form. General Rinpoche, who is with us in summer, said that after much consideration, working from the Sanskrit, working with the Tibetan, I come to the conclusion we should rather use body instead of form. And then you had suddenly somebody who said you can't say body, because body excludes substance and so on, coming from another different world, and so, his way of understanding the word body, was it body or substance? Well, anyway, he had another word. I can't even remember, so I'll tell you. He has another word, and then there was sort of an endless discussion, with a lot of very heated discussion about, why do you do this? Red Pine, in this translation, said da 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 da, and then Temple such and such says da 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 da, and how dare you, and so on. That's an English problem. There's no problem in Sanskrit, rupa. There's no Sanskrit problem in Tibetan, zup.
Chinese is body too.
Is body too? Yeah. So, it's a problem of translation. And the problem is because Tenle Rinpoche comes from his background, he's a scholar, he studied, he knows, he read lots of books in Tibetan, in Sanskrit, and so on and so forth. So he sort of built up his use of a word on that. And this other person comes from a more scientific background, let's say, and so working, in terms of quantum physics and substance and this and that, and then body is not, it's one element, it doesn't cover everything. But they are not talking about the same thing. And a lot of disagreement comes from that. We're all Americans and we're talking about America and we want America to be good. But define America. That would be before they shouldn't do primary, they should do semantic. And define America. Define good. Define benefit. Define threat. Define this. So that we come to the same language. All the dissension come from a collision of words. They are the same word, they have the same shape, but they don't convey, they don't conjure the same feeling. And so this is very, very difficult when you try to communicate. And as we live together, we have to communicate. We have no choice. We cannot be in a silence, because silence is a form of communication where anybody is authorized to think whatever they want about what you didn't say. So it's not helping. So words are very, very slippery and elusive and difficult. Silence is worse. So Rinpoche is saying okay, I think it's putting a grain of salt in the teaching. Kind of a, what do you say, a disclaimer. You know, okay, I'm going to talk about things, but you know, it's based on common experience. Words such as hot and cold, for example, communicate a fairly precise meaning that everyone can agree upon, because everyone has experienced the sensations of heat and cold through direct physical contact at one time or another. This process is very different with inner experiences. You could say, okay, it's hot and cold, but this doesn't define really what hot and cold is. It's in a category of hot, in a category of cold. You know, I come from a place where we use Celsius. And people say like, oh my, it's 45. It's 45, it's pretty hot.
Very hot.
And really, you know, I give up on this imperial metrics, imperial system. Like, why would you have a window that's 3 inches, 1/4 of a quarter of an inch, instead of 20 millimeters? You know, why? Why do you get like, just because you want me to learn about fractions? You know, that's the intention. So I just give up. You know, I brought back from France a tape in centimeters. So I built my house in centimeters. I didn't use the imperial. You know, I mean, we keep the Brits, didn't we? So why do you keep that? That's a mystery. Okay, anyway, that's another thing. But I can feel, you know, as I'm someone who's just like, wow, it's in the 30s. It's getting warm. 40s and unbearable. But like you said, you know, it was in the triple digit. You could say quadruple digit. It doesn't ring a bell. You know, of course now I've been here 7 years, and I have a thermometer, you know, that says it's 80, and I remember that 80, I was suffering. You know, and then when it goes below 30, that it was kind of cold. Yeah. So I have to make a conversion all the time for measures, for temperature, and for words. You know, I'm from somebody from the French culture married an American woman. We have huge cultural gap. Huge. And
It's huge.
yeah, see, we can't even use this. You know, like, it's just huge. Huge. Okay, that's how it happens. Because suddenly we have a new value on the word orange and the word huge. Orange is orange, it's a color. Okay? And huge is a description of something that's pretty big. But we put a value on it. So when one say huge, understands huge, and another one will understand that it's a criticism of my party. So how can you communicate? So you have to pay attention. And being in a multicultural relation, marriage, I had to pay attention to, more specifically, what I meant when I use a word in English that has a very different meaning in French. Like versatile. Versatile in English is somebody who has many talents. It's a quality, versatility. If you say on your resume, very versatile person, you have a lot of experiences, people say like, good, I hire you. In France, versatile means flickery. You're not reliable, you're changing your mind all the time. So if you write, I'm very versatile, you're not hired. You're reliable. You know? So if you don't know this, you know, all these traps, then you're running into big troubles. Or misconception, misunderstanding, miscommunication. So the one thing I discovered throughout, you know, this experience of changing my, you know, moving to another culture, even you think, okay, it's just flying over the pond. And then most of the people here, you know, a lot of them came from Europe, so it shouldn't be so different. It's huge. The difference is really big. and you know, it could lead to a lot of confusion. You know, one example I give to illustrate this, it's a book that's been written by a woman who's married to an American. No, she's an American woman married to a French guy. And then because she realized that their marriage was just going to hit the wall, and she had to think about it, you know, what's going on here, you know, and she thought about the communication problem. And she really researched and wrote a book about the miscommunication. And she realized that in general, when asked something, French will tend to say no first. You know, oh, let's go to the mall. Oh no. You know. But then after that, they will change. Oh no, but they might change. Okay. When they'll say, well, it's quite interesting now, because that was one point of contention. Do you want to go with me, you know, shopping? No. Okay, and then 5 minutes later, okay, when do we go? And that would really, you know, cross her. He was like, can't you make up your mind? Why don't you say yes to begin with? And so she said, oh, I found why you don't do that. You French always say no first. No! Oh, yes! And I had to think why. And said, why do you do that? And said, first I was not aware. Now I'm aware, and I try to remember, yeah, I tend to do that, my parents tend to do that, because when you say no, you can always change your mind positively. So when you say no to somebody, you can 5 minutes later say, okay, let's do it. And it's a positive outcome. If you said yes, like Americans says like, yeah, let's do it. And then everybody's gone, you know? Then it's, you know, when it's come to the point, you say like, oh no, I don't really want to do it. It's a negative outcome. You know, and that's my rationale. That's the story. Just like with French are so better. We think before. Maybe not the reality, but it was very interesting. And now I'm using this in all of my communications. The first thing I do is I try to understand the language. That means how people conceive things. I cannot see what they conceive, but I can see how they express something that I could relate to. And it takes a lot of time because we have to adjust our communication, the language. And the one thing also I learned, which was very inspiring, that came from an article I read from the Tibetan master. His name is Tsony Kyetse Rinpoche. So sort of a very, sort of like he's not, sort of trying to break down, you know, a lot of things that are very stiff and you know, he's kind of like very, very direct. And so he's saying that, you know, the problem is that we are having a conversation. And both of us, we are convinced that we're talking about an objective reality. Okay? Let's talk about the tree in the yard. And at no time we discuss the possibility that maybe there's no tree objectively in the yard. Okay? That I'm talking about my tree, you're talking about your tree, the squirrel is calling his home, and the worm is eating it. And we try to discuss and agree on an objective reality, and we never success. We have no success in doing so because there's no objective reality. It's only subjective reality. And so, basically, you have to abandon the idea of an objective communication. Like I was saying earlier, this first session, you have to abandon the idea that samsara can be fixed. Conditioned existence can be fixed. It's not fixable. Because inherently, it's a product of an ignorant mind that is motivated by mental poison. What do you expect? You know? It's like when people argue, it's like, you man, you know, yeah, well, what do you expect? You're just made out of dirt. And then the man's answer is like, you are made out of a rib. So what do you expect? You know, so samsara can't be fixed. But we can learn to dance harmoniously in this rigged environment. Communication is not happening. Objective communication. So here's the tree. Yes, that's the tree. No, what we're talking is about our experience. We know the tree through our senses, but more precisely through our consciousnesses. Tactile, auditory, olfactory, and so on and so forth. So what we are talking is about a mental picture that we call a tree, and we project an outer objective reality. So we have seen something. And then of course we all see the same thing. No, we don't. And so if you could give up the idea, we have to come to an objective communication and say, okay, what is the deal here? The deal here is that we are talking about subjective experiences, but we are not trying to exchange objectively. We are trying to help each other to refine our experience so that we can dance harmoniously. It's good for everybody. And we can grow in our understanding. It's good for each individual. That can save your marriage. If you know that. If you marry somebody and say, okay, we're going to try to reach harmonious miscommunication. You know. And there's a way to do it. There's a way to do it for one person, a way to do it for another person. And that's not the problem. There's not the way to do it. There are different ways of doing it, and the question is, how are we going to dance together to do it? Knowing that the it is not really the point. The point is in the dance. So that's what Shaman Rinpoche is pointing out here in his disclaimer, is that we are talking about something that doesn't have an objective reality. Do not fix your experience of meditation as being ultimately real. They're emptiness. They're just a dance of light on a stage of space.
To go along with that, also a mistake that's easy to make is to think that we all see things the same way. Then of course, when we don't see things the same way, we're insulted or irritated, you know, if it doesn't support our view. And I remember growing up being aware, or this was, anyway, the way I thought about it, is that our subconscious mind is much bigger than our conscious mind. We really perceive things on a subconscious level, and then the conscious mind is kind of reading what that is. And then I listened to, I forget, scientists or whatever, they were talking about how the body actually is the feels what's happening, and then the mind is deciphering from the feeling what's happening. So it's no wonder that we get it wrong more often than not, and it's no wonder that we all aren't on the same page, because we're all having this kind of experience that we have no awareness of, and then our awareness is trying to, you know, relate it to us, like give us words for it. But really, we're not, we're really in this kind of messy place all the time.
And I think what you're pointing out here is the sense of righteousness. You know, and then very honestly, we think that, you know, that's objective reality. I'm really making an effort here. I'm really doing, you know, soul searching. I'm really thinking about it. You know, and this is the way it is. Can't you see it? You know? And we're very honest. I mean, sometimes people are cheating and, you know, of course, they try to win, you know, and then, you know, they're not honest. And again, a basis for the Dharma communication, or the arising of the Dharma in the dialogue, one of the bases is the honesty. We're not trying to win, we're trying to understand. You know, if you don't have this first prerequisite, honesty, you cannot have a dialogue. So in the way of the Bodhisattva, the Bodhisattva Charyavatara of Shantideva, he says, like, do not begin a debate or discussion with somebody who doesn't have this honesty. Somebody who is not willing to discuss for the sake of clarification. because it's a waste of time, and only anger, resentment, and so on will come from that, because they're trying to convince you that they are right, and probably you're trying to convince them that you are right. So if you're well-intended, you say, okay, let's talk about it, and I really want to put all the chances on our side. So when you say that, could you define it? Could you use not just a code word, but like give me a commentary, how you feel about it, give me pictures and so on, so that I can get that into me, and then say, okay, it sort of resonates with this word. So maybe somebody would say hat, and I said, you know what? It means shoe for me. Okay. Is your hat on your head? No, my shoe is on my head. Haha, we have a good laugh. Because we had a successful miscommunication. Mm-hmm. We're not using the same words, but we somehow could rob our feelings. And that's how we come to this. So it's difficult in everyday communication because of righteousness. Righteousness is a problem that comes with honesty combined with ignorance. Ignorance is, I believe this is objective reality. And this is really the good for for everybody. That's pretty how things should be. And there is a professor in I believe it's in Charles University, wrote a book, Why Good People Fight Over Politics and Religion, and it's basically on righteousness. Because you mean well, you have a good intention for everybody. If only they would understand that this is good for them. And you really love them, and you're ready to kill them at the same time. Because you want these people to be happy. We are the greatest country in the world. We're the smartest people, a lot of talent. If only you would stop being stubborn and following your own ways and come to realize what is real, that would be great. And that's that's a recipe for hell. So this is very serious as a society, as in marriage, in a relationship, at work. But
with kids.
With kids, yeah, with kids.
In my way.
Well, and then it's a little bit more complicated because you're in charge. You cannot. Remember, a woman says like, "I'm totally convinced that my daughter is the reincarnation of my mother." And she was convinced, and then you know what? It totally changed her mind because she was talking as a little girl to her mother, to her daughter. And the daughter got it very quickly. Like, she started playing the mother, so like, you have to do this, you have to do that, and then she could see it worked. And I said, okay, like, stop. Maybe she was your mother, but now she's your daughter. And you are the mother, so you call the shots, not her. And then everything went back in the normal order. You're not here to be a friend of your kids.
There you go.
Sorry, I have friends go to the bar and have friends, but with children, you're here to help them to become decent individuals. And sometimes it's, they don't like it.
True.
Not my problem.
My view.
Not my problem. That's how, my rule, you do it this way.
Be correct.
And I can explain you why we should do this like this and like that. There is a certain logic. It's not just like I'm crazy. There is a logic. You appreciate it, you understand it or not, and work with it. There's no way around it.
See you later.
See you later.
Can you define honesty? Right?
Honesty, I would use maybe, in my word, I would use another word, open willingness. You don't have a hidden agenda. You're trying to push your agenda in the discussion. Like, the end result will be this. And this is, trying how can I manipulate so that we come to the end result that I want. This is dishonest.